You know what's weirdly popular right now? Not caring. Being too into something is treated as a weakness, and trying too hard is cringe. Having a real obsession, a hobby, a passion, a taste that's specific feels almost embarrassing. So people curate this nonchalant persona. They only watch the right movies, they only learn the things that will pay off, they only do the hobbies that they already can and are decent at. And everything has to look effortless, ironic, and socially approved. But that's not life, that's performance. Because the best parts of life require you to care loudly, to be a beginner, to mispronounce words in a language you love, to watch a film that isn't one of the greats and still let it change you a little. Nonchalantness looks cool, but it costs you your interest and eventually your aliveness to a certain extent. I truly don't think that there's such a thing as something that's useless. When I was in high school, a girl once asked me why I spent so much time on ballet, and I was dancing around 20 hours a week at that point. I didn't really know how to answer her. Maybe it seemed a bit pointless looking in from the outside, but it wasn't to me, and in a way that's how I ended up working as a live interpreter for the Bolshoi Ballet Academy, which then led me to an internship in Paris, which eventually led me to my master's program in Switzerland. And none of that was planned, but life is full of these moments that look useless at that time until they aren't. There's a funny reason we have different fonts on computers today. It's because Steve Jobs audited a calligraphy class just out of curiosity, and now we just have a bunch of different fonts, and none of that would have happened if he hadn't audited that random calligraphy course. None of this is intentional, and I don't think anything we do is truly useless. In one way or another, it might lead you somewhere, and which is why I urge to do more quote-unquote useless things, because they might end up leading you somewhere. I think we put too much emphasis on finding something secretly brilliant or just looking for greatness and brilliance in everything, and if it's not brilliant, then it's not worth it. We should appreciate the different bits of animation, even if they didn't inspire anything new, even if they're not the best sequences out there. Appreciate the things that were made, the things that are out there, because a lot of them are great, not because they're the greatest, but just because they're well made, or that they connect with people. And I wish more people would appreciate this. And again, not everyone is like this. My closest friend, she truly adores cinema, and she watches almost a movie every single day. And much like another guy who lived across from my dorm in UCLA, he would spend the very little money that he had on movies. He would go every single night, maybe even twice a day, to watch films. And not just the best of the best, just films, anything. Because he genuinely enjoyed it. I don't think this happens that often anymore. Most would just go to the best of movies, only to the best of museums, to see the best of art. And I think that's kind of unfortunate. That just means that we don't love things as intensely. We don't care enough. We just have a vision to uphold without truly cultivating it to begin with. And honestly, I think that all cartoons are worth watching, as all art is worth seeing, and all languages are worth learning, because by watching, by seeing, by learning, you'll figure out what you like, what cartoons resonate with you, what art speaks to you, what languages you want to keep, what languages you want to speak, simply because you don't understand greatness without context. Of course, the greatness is subjective, it's personal, but you can't really say that you hate certain animation if you haven't actually seen it. And I know some people will say, well, I don't need to taste dirt to know that I won't like it. You know, maybe you should taste it again to appreciate how home-cooked meals taste. Just something to consider. Being that I'm a language learning channel, and I've already did my part on animation, I think this obsession of only the best shows up very strongly in language learning as well. We only want to learn the most popular languages. We only want to learn them to perfection, to a native level with no accent and no mistakes. Like, the only reason to learn a language is to be able to say, yeah, I speak it, like I'm a polyglot, I speak all these languages. But that's never the point. The point is the process of learning it. Or at least in my eyes it is. Learning certain things about each language teaches you about that culture. It teaches you how to adjust, how to exist differently, how to navigate slightly stressful situations. You learn about people through learning the language and talking to those people. When I was living in Paris, I was living in this dormitory-like place, and one of the guys was from Rwanda, And he was telling me about Kinyarwanda, the concept of time is slightly different. By just talking to this person in French, because that is the language that was used for the two of us, you learn about different concepts of language and how people see the world. This exchange of information is what makes language learning fun. You learn about different parts of a new language. You learn different parts of a new culture. By expanding your horizons of different languages, you connect with more people. And this connection, this process of expanding your horizons is what I think is the most important. The reason why people learn languages isn't, I guess a lot of people do learn it to just know the language, but I think we should appreciate the process a bit more just so we can enjoy the language a little bit more and so that we don't have to force ourselves to learn it. I don't know, maybe I'm a bit too pressed on having people enjoy things, but I think that is of utter importance. And of course, the better you get at the language, the more people start pointing out what you're doing wrong. I don't know why, we just tend to really want to correct others. And we're constantly chasing this perfection of ourselves, of others, of art, of language. And I catch myself doing this too. I sometimes feel wary of saying that I am able to do something if I'm not good enough at it. And sometimes I judge people who overvalue their abilities, which is pointless and hypocritical, and I'm trying to fix that. But probably because I was critiqued about so many things growing up and how I sometimes turn the lens outward, but I try to catch myself, and I have an entire video talking about criticism when you're learning a language and how to accept it. If that's something you're interested in, you can watch it right over here. I was in Berlin with a few friends of mine, which is kind of why I haven't been posting a bunch of videos, because I've been traveling for the winter holidays, which I'm sorry about that. And we were debating whether to go to museums, and I would catch myself thinking, well, the only museum I really want to see is the Neues Museum with Nefertiti. So we ended up not going because of that exact mindset that I would go there only for Nefertiti. And then I realized that that's the exact mindset I criticize. You know what? Next time we're in Berlin, we're definitely going. So just to stop being hypocritical. And this mindset about art museums, I heard it from my brother initially. He was saying how what's the point of going to an art museum? You only really look at the artists that you already like anyways, or the ones that are worldwide accepted. And I tend to disagree with him. I think the point of museums isn't to just look at something great. It's to figure out what you like and what you dislike, what artwork connects to you, what moves you and what doesn't. And that's why museums contain so much variety. Not everything is meant to impress you. Sometimes things are there just to help orient yourself. And I was recently working on a project about aesthetics, and I'm planning on continuing it later down the line, trying to see whether aesthetics are universal or not. And what stood out to me was this. The artworks that we think of as aesthetic covered an enormous range. Kind of resembles the idea of what is the great isn't collapsed into a single idea. It's supposed to give you a space to discover where you stand in this space of goodness. But that can be incredibly overwhelming to find yourself in this sea of everything. That's why I'm not a huge fan of Louvre-style museums where there's just everything. Because they don't lead you much, they just drop you into the mix and you have to figure it out on your own. Same with the National Gallery in London. I don't know, I'm just not a big fan of that because they don't serve too much of a purpose. They present you with greatness, progressing you through the story without leading you through it or even helping you a little bit. I much rather go to museums such as Orsay or Pompidou, places that lead you through and don't overwhelm you with the sheer amount of aesthetic art. And this is also part of the reason I started this channel to begin with. Not to tell people what to like, but to give a bit of structure to something that can feel endless. There are a lot of great channels that talk about animation, and most of them focus on well-known titles, and that makes total sense, but I really wanted people to experiment more, to wander a bit, to discover things they wouldn't have searched for on their own. And if I can make that process a little bit easier, then that's more than enough for me. I do think that art is excessively gatekept. Languages are gatekept, and to my massive surprise, so is animation. But though not intentionally, most just never look into it because some are truly quite hard to find, even if you know the names. In one of my comments under one of my videos, I think it was my French video, which you can watch right here, somebody mentioned a Canadian movie. And I found that movie and found out later that that animation studio made a lot of other animated movies that I really enjoyed. And in the process of trying to figure out which ones I really watched, it took me a few hours. So considering that I already knew the studio, I already knew kind of what they were about, it was close to impossible to find these animations. And imagine the search of animations if you don't even know where to start. And I understand that it can be extremely overwhelming, and that's something that I want to easen up, and to create this massive list of all of the animations, an atlas of animations to a certain extent, for people to watch and to learn about and to share between each other. I just want people to appreciate animation more. That is what I desperately want people to do. To enjoy it and not just check it off because that's all they need. To watch animations that people have never seen, that people have never even heard of. So that it's not something to brag about, but rather to inspire others to do. It's kind of why I hate the Oscars, and I wish they would consider opening the field to more interesting animation. And this is an unpopular opinion, of course. They're focusing too much on Disney and Pixar animations and rarely reach out into other categories. I mean, Miyazaki has been drawn in bit by bit, but still, they miss so many different animations. For years, there have only been 2 categories where voters weren't required to watch everything: Best Picture and Best Animated Feature. And I'm honestly not a huge fan of how Best Picture is decided either, but unlike Best Picture, animation is often treated like homework, like a chore, like something you sit through. It feels like some people choose certain animations just because their kids liked them without actually watching any of the other ones or even that particular one either, which I think tells you more than enough. Animation isn't treated as something to engage with, and is treated like something to enjoy. And that attitude doesn't stop just at the Oscars. It trickles down, and people don't really watch animation. A friend once invited me over to make macarons, and we put on Puss in Boots in the background. At some point I noticed we weren't really watching it at all, and it was just there. I don't have anything against that. It just stayed with me because animation so often gets treated in this way. We all know that the attention span argument, we scroll, we multitask, we half watch, and that's fine, but that's not watching. I heard that certain films are now intentionally being made for people who scroll or do other tasks while quote unquote watching, which I think is just disappointing. You know, we were rewatching the Pirates of the Caribbean, and you know, it's kind of hard to follow if you half watch it, which I think makes it a great film to watch because you have to be active, you have to be participatory in this watching experience, because otherwise you'll miss the point. As of recent, the most popular movies have been sequels or third movies in a series, and how a lot of people rather not risk it for something new and go to the movies and pay for something that is already proven to be good enough. And I think this is kind of unfortunate, it's kind of sad, and I wish more people would experiment a little with newer things. And I gotta give it to the Oscars for this year. They did, their winning animation was Flow, which I have yet to watch, and I will watch it. But it's not standard Pixar or Disney, which props to them. Latvian movie, still need to watch it, but I will. I often turn to other countries for animation recommendations. For anime, since I love it so much, I usually go for a Japan Media Arts Festival animation. They have some of my favorites and some very interesting films too, like Princess Mononoke or Mononoke Hime. Let me show you my love for Mononoke Hime. My favorite Miyazaki film. They have it as one of the winners, and so I'm quite biased. But they also have The Girl Through Up Through Time, who also not too many people have heard of, or Tatami Galaxy, which is my absolute favorite series by this point. They also have very interesting ones like Glassy Ocean or The Old Man and the Sea, which I believe is a Soviet film animation. And they're just ones that people rarely have heard of. I mean, there are also other ones like Spirited Away, which people have heard of, or Millennium Actress. Great animation by Satoshi Kon.
Сейчас я что-то моргнул там, услышал Old Man and the Sea.
Да.
Чё ты про него рассказываешь?
Я говорю, что он тоже выиграл в том Japan Media Festival.
Ого.
Mm-hmm. I think Japan does value animation far more than the US, but they also far prioritize their nations' animations, of course, so they tend to go more for Japanese and anime-based animations. Exploring different countries' winners greatly helps find interesting new things. And that's what I hope many people start doing. People who enjoy finding animation, people who enjoy watching it, and who care for it, to start looking for more variety, to start looking for more interesting things to watch, and not focusing exclusively on the greatest. Because apparently, depending on the country, the greatest changed all the time. Much like a lot of linguists wish for variety in languages, and how a lot of them are very saddened by the fact that so many languages are disappearing. I wish for variety in animations because you don't understand what is great unless you look at everything. And of course that's impossible and improbable, but it's something to hope for, something to reach for. I think we're a bit too comfortable in what we consider to be the greatest of the greats and no longer try to expand into other sectors of the animation world, or the language world, or the film world, or the art world, or anything in general that people could find themselves passionate about. Which is why I honestly parade children so much and their phenomenal language learning abilities, not because they're smarter, not because they're actually necessarily better at it, but because they're curious and all-accepting. And they're extremely curious to the extent that they're willing to hear anything and everything, watch anything and everything. That's what makes them so great at absorbing different cultures, different languages, different animation. And they don't care if they're bad at something. They don't wait to be ready. They just kind of plunge into it and see where it goes. And if adults could reclaim even a little bit of that mindset, we're definitely surpass kids because we already have so many advantages. And instead we kind of become cynical and we ask what's the point and why do this and where is this going? And that kills curiosity. And I have an entire video talking about this point, which you can watch right here if you're interested. I don't know, it's just my take. I think people are being drained of their passions and their dreams and desires, and I really wish that we would go back to that in the end. And again, I have no idea where animation will take me, but right now I have this tiny channel, and maybe one day I'll have a massive collection of beautiful, strange, and forgotten animations, which maybe I'll be able to show to my children. Or maybe other people will share them with other people. And you know, I think that's great. I want people to share the animations that I share. I want people to start their own channels and maybe share this animation with them. Like, I just want people to be more engaged with everything that they're doing. And maybe one day I'll amass this collection of beautiful, strange, and forgotten animations, and maybe nobody will watch it, but I'll have it and I'll be able to share it with my kids or with friends or other people that are interested. My dad watched my video on French animation, which I can link up here if you want to watch it, and he told me that those were his favorite animations when he was younger, and he watched it and then shared it with a friend of his because he wanted to send recommendations from me and to have them presented in such an organized manner. So maybe this video is just me asking, myself included, to be less cynical, more curious, and more willing to enjoy things without needing a justification. Because the process of language learning, the process of finding animation, the process of watching the animation is where everything actually happens. Thank you for watching. I know this has been a bit of a rambly video, but I hope you enjoyed it. And if you're interested in this kind of content, linguistics, language learning, animations, and all that, I'd love it if you could subscribe. And if you feel like watching some of my other videos, that generally helps me more than you think. As I mentioned before, here are my videos on criticism and language learning, and another one on how children learn languages through curiosity. And please let me know what other things you'd like me to cover. These videos are for you, and I really want to know what you enjoy watching and what you're curious about and what you want to learn more of. Thank you again, and see ya.